Hey everybody, this is Toby with Global Integrity Finance, and today we're here with Jim, Ben, and Keerti Joshi, and we're going to talk to them a little bit about who they are, what they do, their relationship with Global Integrity Finance, and then really dig deep into owner financing. We know that this is something that has become kind of a big topic with a lot of investors who don't want to be landlords but want to build assets. And we understand and believe that the owner financing is the most lucrative way to do that. We brought them in to talk to them today. They are very educated and experienced in that, and I just got to turn my phone off before I get in serious trouble. But so we're going to talk to them about it. We're going to talk about best practices, horror stories, all that stuff. But first and foremost, I want to introduce you to Jim, Ben, and Keerti. And, you know, let's talk about your guys' history. You guys have been with Global as a financial partner for, what, a little over 2 years now?
Right.
And in that role, what is your guys' position as a financial partner?
So we do the back-end lending for notes and for syndicated deals.
Syndicated, okay.
Sorry.
She's nervous on camera, it's okay.
I'm going to edit all this down.
I want this live.
Oh my God.
So, great. What brought you to Global? I mean, you know, you guys have been with us for a couple of years, but why? Why Global and why not somebody else?
You know, I'll answer and then I'll let you answer. Initially, we came here to borrow money, and we were new in real estate, just looking around for some opportunities to see who we can build a partnership with. And for us, getting to know you and the company and all your processes and how things work, we not only just wanted to potentially borrow from you, but we were also wanting to partner with you on the back end process too.
Okay.
Yeah, we initially came to borrow money, and I think at the time, about 2.5, 3 years ago, you actually had a group where you were helping newer people in the investing world find properties.
Mm-hmm.
That attracted us.
Mm-hmm.
We had, prior to that, we'd found a lot of our own properties, but we're always keeping our eyes open to new ways to go out and acquire properties, do deals with other investors. And at that time, that was part of your program. Your program's evolved since then. But before we left that first day, yeah, we were attracted to that. We were looking for a way to borrow money, but what you had to offer with your syndicated deals and with your equity pool fund at that time, you ended up convincing us to loan you money instead of...
Wasn't that the running joke? You came to borrow money, by the time you left, you cut a check to me.
And it's worked out great.
Yeah, so it just shows you how good of a salesman I am.
Absolutely.
So great. Well, let's talk about, you know, some of those deals that you guys did on the syndicated side. You know, people have asked me several times, you know, what do we need to do if we want to become a lender, and how do we raise capital and all that? You guys had come in as you were working with somebody else on some owner finance, where you guys were the private lender, I guess, on the deal. And you guys were holding some seconds, and this individual had some firsts. And those deals really weren't as transparent as they needed to be.
Right.
Yep.
And I think that's how the introduction started, was, hey, we're looking at maybe liquidating some money on some owner finance notes that we had. How would we use those as assets and leverage and all that? One of the things that we want to talk about in great details is, why did that deal, do you feel, not work out? Because we see and hear a lot of people like yourselves that had several $100,000 that thought, you know what, I'm not making anything in the market, or I'm definitely not making anything in an IRA or a mutual fund, but if I can get into real estate as a lender, maybe there's an asset protection there, it's got good returns. But that deal kind of didn't work out. Without really going into the meat and potatoes, but what went wrong with that relationship or situation to help protect other people?
Well, what went wrong with that particular relationship that actually introduced us to you guys was they were dishonest.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't, even the things that they put on paper, they did not uphold their end of the deal.
Gotcha.
And our mistake, and I'll take full responsibility, my mistake was I allowed somebody else to control a transaction as opposed to maintaining control of the transaction. We had done quite a few owner finance deals before we met this particular individual. We relied on professionals, but we always controlled the situation in those things. We met this particular individual that indicated he was going to allow us to have a first lien position on properties, but what it turned out to be was he had promised several other people the
Gotcha.
same first lien position,
Mm-hmm.
and since he was controlling the paper,
Nobody knew.
nope, everybody thought they were in first lien
Right.
position, and so I guess one of our lessons learned from that is if you're going to do owner finance, always control the process. Doesn't mean you can't rely on other people to do the things that they do better than you,
Mm-hmm.
but control the paper, control the process. Don't put yourself into a risky second or third position unless you go into that fully aware and you're not paying par to be in a second or third. Don't
Right.
pay par to be in a second or third
Yeah,
position.
I think the other component of that is ask questions.
Right.
Just understand that you don't know everything, and when you have questions, ask the questions. They can be professionally asked, you don't have to be rude, but at the same time, if you do not understand the full process from start to finish, then there are going to be cracks there, and you're trusting somebody else to take care of that and make sure that they're actually going to deliver on what they said they're going to deliver on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, we were still feeling kind of new in the process, and so I wasn't comfortable asking all the questions that I had questions about. And I shouldn't have done that, because ultimately it's our money.
Right,
And we've got to
right.
be careful with our money. So,
And I think the best way that we try to do with our relationship is make the situation completely transparent.
exactly.
And if it's not, you have to make it become transparent, right?
Exactly.
So for anybody that's looking to get into that world and partner up with anybody, I think the biggest lesson that I've always learned or tried to adhere to, and that you guys are saying, is make the relationship transparent.
Yeah.
That everybody knows what everybody's role is and how it's going to be played out. And if you don't see it being transparent, if there's something that's not crystal clear to you, then you have that responsibility to make it crystal
You've
clear.
got to initiate
right?
that to let the other person know, hey, I don't understand this little component.
Right.
Tell me what's going on here.
Right.
In layman's terms. It
Right.
doesn't have to be specific and with all the layers of detail, but enough to understand that you're going to get from point A to point B, and ultimately your money is safe, or it's not safe. I mean, you got to
Right.
you know
Weigh
have
those
that option
balances, yeah.
and weigh those out.
Yeah. So to date, how many properties do you guys have right now under owner finance structure?
So
Well, we've got a number of rentals. We've liquidated 2 of our owner finance properties within the last, 90 days?
yep, they just
Uh,
refinanced.
That paid off?
They paid off. I think we've got 5 currently.
5.
I think we have
Under the owner finance, and then you have some other that are rentals.
rentals. Yeah.
So, and I want to talk about that because in the last 26 years of being in real estate and in financing, I've always been questioned and wrestled with being a landlord or being a bank.
Mhm.
You know, why doesn't Toby and Angie Potter own rental properties? My argument's always been I never want to be a landlord.
Yeah.
Because I hear all the horror stories of the landlord. The water heater always breaks at 2 in the morning. The ACH always goes out, when it's 12 below or 110. So, and the renter, the tenant, doesn't know how to fix it, doesn't want to fix it, so you have to go take that headache hardship on. Whereas in an owner finance, you're a bank. They own that property, they're on title, it's their responsibility now to maintain and upkeep that. So share with me why you have both.
Well, I had to laugh because, you know what, air conditioners break in owner finance properties. Air conditioner broke in her mom and dad's house 30 days ago. Air conditioner
It
broke.
It breaks, but you're right, it always breaks, but the difference is who has to fix it.
Correct.
You're right, it always breaks, don't get me wrong. It's not that they don't break in the owner, but you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly, and that's one of the advantages of owner finance. Not to say that rental property is bad. There's advantages to rental property, that you can't get in owner finance.
Right. Evictions.
I'm sorry?
Evictions.
Yeah.
On a rental, you can evict
You can
immediately.
evict.
On an owner finance, you gotta go through foreclosure.
Rental property, you can take advantage of appreciation if you're in a market that is appreciating.
Right.
But owner finance, yes. Being the bank, air conditioner breaks, they fix it. Insurance is not your responsibility. They've got to insure it, and they insure you as the lender.
Right.
So you're insured and we've had that happen. We've had a property that we had
Right.
owner finance that was
There was
in
a
a
fire.
fire, and the insurance company wrote us the check,
Paid you off.
paid us off.
Right.
The advantage of owner finance, in our opinion, is it's a lazy way
Lazy
to be a
landlord.
landlord.
Agree.
No maintenance, no insurance.
No taxes.
No
Property taxes.
no capital gains taxes immediately. You defer those taxes
Till they refinance and pay you off.
until they're paid off. Huh?
Now you're in trouble.
So there's and the other great advantage in what we do with owner finance is compared to a rental where you might get first and last month's rent. Owner finance, we charge 20% of the sales price down.
Period.
So we immediately have a 20% of that
Excess
sales
down payment.
price
Yeah.
right back in our pocket. So if something goes south, they decide to punch holes in the wall, they skip out, which they're unlikely to do.
Right.
Most of these people already put $40,000 to $50,000, I'll say deposit down.
Mhm.
It's a down payment.
Earnest money.
It's a down
Earnest
payment.
money.
Yeah.
They're not going to walk out on that, but if they do, we can fix a whole lot of holes in the wall for $50,000 versus first and last month's rent of
Right.
$1,800 to
Yeah.
$2,500.
And so one of the reasons why I have a rental is because I actually had a note that I had purchased
Mhm.
using my IRA funds.
Mhm.
They defaulted and I took the house back, and it happened to be a rental property that another investor had, and I was a lien holder.
Gotcha.
So that's how I kind of fell into having a rental in my IRA. And there's ways to mitigate some of this. You know, the rentals are okay if that's what your goal is. It just depends on where you are with your investment strategy. So with the property I have, it's out of state. So I do have a company that manages it for
management
me.
firm. Mhm.
They verify the renters are legitimate, they've got good history, credit, etc. They're doing the collections for the first and last month's rent up front, and then they are doing all the collections and maintenance issues get covered by them.
Is that cost prohibitive?
It's not, because
not.
that is incorporated as in determining what that rent is gonna be and what's fair for that area.
So
And-
it's already built in,
Yes.
so that there's still a good profitability on the net
There's still a gain.
rent, net gain.
And there's a net gain, I'm still getting the appreciation on it as well if I should decide to sell it at some
Later
point
down
down
the
the
road.
road. So there's benefits to both. Even with owner finance, if you happen to fall into a situation where they stop paying or they choose just not to pay the full amount and you have to go into a foreclosure process, that can drag out just depending on the individuals living there, what you can and can't work out. But again, you can mitigate some of that by having a third-party collection company there. So conceptually the same as a property management company, but they actually do the collections, they do amortization schedules, they verify escrow is correct every year. So if something should go awry, you've got a third-party company that has documentation of everything, when things got paid, any late fees that were applied.
So you have that to
missing
take
escrow.
before the judge and say,
Absolutely.
here's our paper trail.
Yeah.
You know, they did good up until this time, but here's where we've reached out to, not you personally, but a third disinterested party has reached out, tried to work this out, and they've failed. Therefore, we ask the court to find in
Right.
favor.
And the same with the property management company. If they are doing the managing of it, now you've got a third party involved.
Mhm.
They can also help you and be your representation.
What about the different laws in each state? I mean, we know that in Texas, well, now a primary resident is pretty much across the board. It's, you know, as a primary resident on the owner finance, I can file TROs, I can file bankruptcy, and I think, you guys are still in litigation on a deal that's going on several years now?
Yeah, we're into what, about year number three?
Year number 3 on an individual that you did an owner finance
Yes.
on. They haven't made any payments, and you've been fighting this because they filed bankruptcy, right?
Yep.
Which stopped all those proceedings. Now that's been exhausted, right?
Right.
And now you're in the final stages of finally getting them out. And I guess that would be the biggest downfall of an owner finance.
Correct.
Is if it goes south, you've got the primary resident laws on their favor, whereas on a rental, it's just a rental. You give notice, you kick them out,
Right.
and evict.
And I hate to use the word downfall, I mean, it's a risk, but if you've got the ability to weather those small
storm.
storms, it ends up being actually beneficial. For instance, this particular couple that bought this house, I mean, they did put 20% down, which if you're smart with how you use that money, that's more than paid what it would have been in the rent that
Yeah.
they haven't been paying.
Absolutely.
Right, so you're still ahead of the
They're
game.
still ahead in the game.
Right.
The house that they purchased, that one of two things will happen. They'll eventually get caught up, or they'll eventually leave. And if they eventually leave, the house has gone up in value in that neighborhood probably 80%. So we're gonna have that house back.
With now
Plus-
full
With
valuation,
now full
Correct.
value.
not what you originally sold it at,
Not
but with
with
the
the
appreciation,
notice.
yeah.
And with the
So that
appreciation,
would
we're
be
gonna turn
your,
around and do it again. And
Yeah.
so they're gonna walk away from a $180,000 house over roughly $80,000 that they can't figure out how to pay in a mortgage.
right.
So for us, it's a win. I mean, yeah, we haven't.
It's
we
a
haven't-
headache, but
It's a headache.
It's a headache, but it's life.
But
It's a
it is.
business,
It's a-
right?
it's a business, and so like any other business, you have to take into account these types of risks or
Mhm.
delays that might come into play. And as long as you have the financing behind it, so you can float that time
Right,
period.
so you're
whatever
not, now you're not financially
We're not
strapped
struggling, right?
to make your bills because somebody else is not paying. you.
Correct.
Right.
If this would have been our first deal that we had done,
Oh,
we
yeah.
probably would have.
Probably would have bailed.
We would have bailed. We never would have done another
We
deal.
see
would've
that.
done-
Oh my gosh,
But
Jim.
when you put
Yeah.
one of those within, 20 other properties,
Right.
Yeah, between
It's-
flips and buying notes and, you've got other income coming
A
in.
diversified
That you
portfolio.
can handle one, yeah.
Right. And we see that, and that's one of the reasons why we want to have this conversation, is that we see so many people make a bad decision on their first deal, whether it's a flip or whether it's an owner finance or a rental, and they lose their shirt on it,
Right.
or they lose their shirt and they're out. And if there's any way that we can start educating and creating a platform for the newbie, to make better decisions and not have to weather the storm right off the bat, but to get some positive,
Yeah.
then when the storm hits, that's not all they know.
Right.
And I agree, if that would have been your first deal, it would have been your only deal.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we're trying to let everybody know that yes, real estate is very lucrative, but it's like everything else.
It is.
If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Right.
Exactly.
Everybody would do it. And so because it's not simple, it's not black and white, it's not cut and dry, and you do, even as savvy and as educated as both you are, as you are, Keerti. I mean, Jim's arm candy. I get that.
Yes,
But
I am.
as savvy as you guys are, there's still mistakes you've made.
Absolutely.
And we'll make more.
And with Jim on your side, you're going to make a lot
We
more.
will.
Yeah. But so,
One thing to keep in mind there, whether in this deal is a prime example, and other deals that people are thinking about doing, is you need to keep in mind that more often than not, you make your money when you buy
Right.
or acquire a property,
right.
not necessarily when you sell it. And we bought this property right, and regardless if they paid us or not, we're gonna make
The
money.
asset is still a
The
value.
asset is the
Right.
asset, and, we hope that they pay. We want we want to provide houses, safe and habitable houses for families to move into and stay in there 30 years. But if for some reason life happens and they choose not to, and we have to
Right.
take that house back, we still have an asset that is worth more than
It's
what
not
we
a
paid for it.
devastational blow to the portfolio.
That's right.
Right.
So let's talk about that. So when you say, you make money when you buy, and that is rule number one in real estate investing.
Yep.
You make money when you buy, but what does that mean? If I'm brand new, well, how do I make money when I buy? Can you break that down a little bit?
I guess the simplest way is there is a perceived value. You know, in our industry, most people call it a ARV or an after repair value. There's a value that is placed on a property, on a house, based on what everybody thinks it's worth.
Okay.
We, and every successful investor, wants to buy that house for less than what everybody else thinks it's worth.
Right.
And it may sometimes need repair. It sometimes may not need any repair. It may need a coat of paint. You may have to go in and move some walls around. You know, but you make the money by buying it and spending less or tying up less money than people who are willing to buy it would be willing to pay for it
At that time.
Yeah.
So the sweet deals, and how many of those are out there on the street today?
Probably hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, I would
Out
say
of millions of houses?
Yeah,
So it's not something you can find just driving up and down the streets. I mean,
No, you need to have a process.
Yeah.
the right project, the valued property is not something that's just readily out there for everybody.
correct. And you have to network, you have to get to know different areas. Doesn't have to be where you live, but wherever you're looking, you need to really assess the area and need to do some networking. We found that through networking, if you're able to find a situation where maybe an elderly family member is moving to an assisted living facility, for example, that was one that we found. And we were able to work with that family to help them get the funds they needed out of that house and still not have to step into that house and deal with everything that was in that house, and walk away, take care of their family member, get them settled into where they needed to be, and we were able to take over that property.
Before that property ever even hit the
Got on,
market for
correct.
every other investor
Yeah.
to bid it out of profitability.
Right.
And I think that's what's so important when clients call and they're new investors and they're like, well, how do I find properties? I'm like, you know what, when you figure that out, let me know, because we'll write a book and we'll make billions of dollars. Because every investor will spend 85 to 90% of the time finding the right property.
Yeah.
Now you're right, there's hundreds of thousands of those deals out there.
There are,
But they're not public.
correct.
They're through networking, through relationships. It's talking to a family that, you know, hey, yeah, mom or dad or grandma or grandpa is now moving out. Most of those family members don't want to deal with fixing it up, listing it, doing it. If they can unload it for a value that fits their need,
Correct.
and you still get it at a price that's profitable, that's a win-win.
And there are dozens of ways, you know, there are ways out there to find properties that we don't even know about. I mean, there's dozens of ways. There's wholesalers.
And I don't
we've
want to
used
knock wholesalers
We've used
because,
wholesalers.
yeah, there are some that are very good, they're fair in their pricing, and you can get in, choose from a list and
Right.
move forward. They're not all that way, so again, you have to know what your numbers are, what do you want out of it.
Still gotta
what are
do
the
your
profits.
homework.
You gotta do your due diligence.
Can't rely upon somebody else
Yeah.
to,
But-
and we see a lot of that, where wholesalers have thrown the ARV, thrown the rehab, thrown the as is and all that, and it's wrong.
Correct.
But you have new investors who are tired of driving up and down the highways, sending out mailers, getting zero response. All of a sudden, they got a deal that on paper looks great, so they take it down.
Right.
Yep.
And then it comes to us, and we say, "Oh no,
The numbers don't work.
run." Or I can't. I put $5,000. I put $6,000 up non-refundable.
Yeah.
I'm stuck with it. You can't do that.
Yeah,
If
that's right.
And, you know, we've gotten several deals just by treating people fairly.
Yeah.
If you treat people fairly,
Yeah. Not get greedy.
not
Yeah.
get greedy.
We're not trying to squeeze every penny out of every deal.
Right.
If we can work with the family to get what they need, we try to really understand and focus on what is it that they're actually needing.
Mhm.
Their need may be, they're overwhelmed and they don't want to deal with the house.
Mhm.
Their need may
Right.
be, I just have to have 50,000 out of this because that's my loan and that's what I gotta pay. Once you can get to that level and understand what is it that they are actually needing,
Mhm.
Exactly. They may
you
not
can
need
solve a
money.
problem.
Right.
Money may not be their issue. A
Right.
way to control the property where they're not having to have a tax burden.
Right.
Uh,
Inheritance
Inheritance tax.
taxes and all that, yeah.
They may just need a place to move their parents' stuff until they can figure out what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you step in and help them do that. You give them options that I guess until you've done a few of them, you may not even know what those options are, but acquiring property is probably 80+% listening to what it is the person needs.
Finding the problem and coming up with solutions.
Solve the
Exactly.
problem.
And I think it's life.
is.
When you're in sales or anything in that, if you find that customer or client's problem and you have a solution, you have a closed deal.
Absolutely.
But if you don't know what their problem is and you're trying to shove down their throat your position, then it's probably not going to work
Yeah.
because you're not meeting their needs and there's not anything in it for them.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's great. So let's talk about best practice. So
Okay.
you found a property, you now own it. What's the steps and stages that somebody needs to go through as they work into making this an owner finance project?
Okay, so I just really jotted down a couple of steps.
Yeah, like 7 pages there?
And it's actually, no, it's six
Oh, 6
steps.
pages.
6 steps. And it's basically, finding a property, single-family home is what we focus on
Okay.
for owner finance because it seems to be within that price point. It's reasonable as far as the mortgage.
What is that
payment.
price point that you feel most comfortable in?
So we try to have an ARV of less than $250,000.
Okay,
That's a good starter home, single family that, they can move in. For those that maybe have a glitch on their credit or have no credit, doing an owner finance is a good option for them to start building that, and it helps them in the process.
Okay.
So 250 or under is kind of what we target. We look at, of course, the neighborhood and the area to make sure that it's conducive to a single family home. Do the fixing up that's needed, then determine, is it something you can just do a for sale by owner and get that out there? If the demand is high enough, you may not need a realtor.
Right.
Or go with a realtor that's investor friendly, somebody who's not going to charge you the full 3 to 6%. And then they can get it listed, and in that listing, you want to just make a couple of points. I always say to be upfront with the fact that, we do require an RMLO, a third-party verifier.
So
of
it's
their
listed
credit
as a
background.
owner finance,
Listed as an
Okay.
owner finance
In the
option
special
available.
provisions in that? Okay.
Exactly, and that they are responsible, the buyer or the borrower, responsible for the RMLO
Okay.
report.
That stands for Residential Mortgage Loan Officer.
So it's a licensed loan officer
Licensed loan
that's
officer.
approved by Fannie Freddie programs.
Yes.
Okay? FHA, VA, all that.
Correct, and then I also like to put in there, our interest rates are not gonna be as good as a bank, but
Right.
again, we are taking on that risk. So usually when a borrower or buyer is getting a little more serious, we do make sure that we share that information with them, along with the terms, whatever those terms are that you guys decide upon, 30-year, 15-year, whatever.
Okay?
And then pick a good title company, somebody that you trust, and make sure that that's also in there so you know where that closing is going to happen.
Now, will all title companies handle a owner finance transaction? Or some say we don't want to do
They
that?
may not, and that's
Okay.
something you have to ask. The title company that we use, they also help us draw up the paperwork for the owner finance portion of that title paperwork, or
Okay.
closing paperwork.
Uh-huh.
So, find one that's good, build that relationship, and verify that they have that owner finance option.
Okay, all right.
And I would say that, work with a title company that knows what they're doing with owner finance. Not somebody that says, yeah, we can do it, and has to run back and look it up on a computer
Right.
to figure it out.
Because if
somebody-
you miss something and then you go into foreclose, you may end up handing that house over to that buyer.
Yeah.
That's
For
correct.
non-disclosure, misrepresentation,
Error.
anything that a sharp attorney will pick up and say, guess what, borrower?
Yeah.
You now own this house free and clear, we're gonna see this not up.
That's
Because they didn't disclose all this to you.
Right.
So because of this being an owner finance and this being a primary resident, you have to be extremely transparent.
Yes.
That they understand what they're getting into. You're not complying with TRID laws, which Fannie and Freddie has come out with, but you're still having to completely disclose.
Right.
Closing costs, interest rates, APR, all that, and that's why it's important to have the RMO involved in this, because that's what they're doing.
That's
It is,
correct.
because now you're relying on a sanctioned third-party provider to look at their ability to purchase that home from you and tell you, yes, they have enough income, or no, this would not be looked at in the eyes of the law as
As affordability.
as something that they can afford.
Right.
We're still ultimately can choose, do we want to sell those people or not? We've chosen to err on the side of making sure that if something were to ever happen down the road, that we can go and rely on that third-party provider that said, look, this is the income that you gave us, this is the assets that you said that you had available. You reported to these sellers that you had the affordability, the ability to afford this house,
Right.
and they relied on what you told them that you had before they sold you the property. Just to go out and willy-nilly owner finance a property to somebody and then get caught up in a legal disagreement is not something that you want to do as an
So
This gets back to, you
Yeah.
know, when you were saying like the profit is in the buy,
Yeah.
this is also a protection measure, right, for us up front.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody is clear on how things are laid out, everybody's agreeing that yes, you can afford my interest rates and I can sell you the property safely knowing that you're gonna be able to pay
I'm on
and that
loan
you're willing.
Right.
Yeah,
Are you disclosed their income?
Yes.
So they show you this is what their annual income, their 30-day pay stub, so you're treated like a true bank.
Yes.
so the RMO process, the third-party company that we use, they
Yeah.
actually provide us with a full report and then a summary page that tells us the debt-to-income, overall debt-to-income ratio. But
Okay.
it does have all that detail where it,
Supporting documents?
all the supporting documents.
Okay. And so basically, most borrowers can income qualify for an owner finance, they just can't credit qualify.
Oh,
Maybe
right,
through a
right.
divorce,
That's correct.
some credit ding, something like that. And so this gives them the opportunity to clean that up
Yep.
over a 1, 2, 3, 4-year period and then refinance to a FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac and pay you off.
Absolutely, and we encourage that. We don't have any prepayment penalties. You can
Okay.
put that in if you choose, but
Right.
we choose not to.
Mhm.
The one final step that we have as part of our overall process, and it is part of the title, the closing paperwork, is that we also have a third-party collection company who's bonded and insured, and they do the actual collecting of the mortgage. They verify the amortization. They make sure that the escrow account is up to date. If it gets modified for the following year, they are responsible for sending out those
For
notifications.
the increase of monthly payments and
Correct,
all that.
increase or decrease depending on the taxes.
Right,
and
yep.
So,
Shortage and overages and all that.
yep, and
Okay.
so all of that paperwork is available and all of it's in writing to review at closing.
And do you get a monthly statement? What do you guys get from that third-party company?
We do, so we get a couple of things. We get deposit information every month, so for every payment that's made, we get a notification. We also have a site that we can log into to see the overall status of any given loan, where they're at, what's the principal, what's the payoff, et cetera. And then, I don't know what else
We get up, if there's anything that happens on the property, like from a city violation perspective.
Oh,
Say
okay.
the weed-
So
weeds
the
have
weeds
grown
gone too
much.
high, yards 2 foot high,
Yeah, we're notified of any violations.
trash out in the front yard, stuff like that?
If they haven't renewed their insurance, we know right away,
Okay.
because, or paid their insurance, we know
Or
right away.
taxes.
Yeah,
If their taxes are delinquent, we know right away.
okay.
So we're kept abreast of everything that's happening on that property from a financial aspect. We're given, at the end of the year, 1099. That's
And
one
this
of
is
the-
all from the
This is all
third-party
from the third-
management firm?
Right,
Okay.
so we know what portion of the monies that were collected throughout the year were applied to the principal of the loan and what is applied to the interest of the loan. The
Okay.
nice thing about owner finance is monies that you collect, you don't pay taxes on the principal that's collected. That's a non-taxable. You only pay taxes on the interest that's collected.
What if you apply 100%? So let's say you have a property that's 150,000, you owe 100 on it, but you're collecting on the 150. So it's simple numbers. You're making a $1,000 a month payment to the bank, and the borrower, the client, is making a $1,500 payment to you. And if you, so the difference would be a $500 of interest earned. If you applied a full 115 towards your principal, you still charge tax on that difference. So instead of just making the $1,000 monthly payment that you're owed, you apply to the 100% of what you're earning on the property towards the mortgage.
I don't want to.
Because you're not a CPA.
I don't want to give anybody.
Yeah, let's make a disclosure. They're not CPAs, they're not
I'm
accountants.
not going to give
Professionals
I'm
or
not gonna give
finance
anybody accounting
professionals.
device, but you've got two different transactions going on there that you should
Right.
give to your
Tax guy.
accountant.
Come on, Jim.
One is the out of the $1,500 that you've collected.
Right.
How much of that is interest?
Right.
You're going to be taxed on.
Period. No matter how you
Now,
apply it.
Right. Now, however you choose on this side of the ledger to legally lower your tax liability, and if that is paying off the debt that you owe, then
Because it's still an expense over here.
it's an expense over
You're
here.
gaining an asset, an equity asset, but you still have,
So again, in that initial
Cost of
paperwork
goods.
at closing,
uh-huh,
as part of that owner finance documentation, it will be in there on what the interest rate is,
Right.
what the principal payment, all of that, and the amortization schedule gets put in that. So they know what they're gonna expect and what they get, and we also know for that note, this is the principal, this is the interest.
right.
Any underlying note that we have is like an item number 2, it's a separate thing.
Gotcha.
So the combination of that
Mhm.
is what then your tax professional
yeah.
would determine
I
what
owe this,
portion
I'm
of that is
receiving
actual
this,
profit.
and there's a gap between them.
And you may choose to pay off your 30-year note
In 10,
in 10.
right, by making those extra, the slow payments,
Absolutely.
Exactly. Or you may choose not to.
and live off the difference.
And
Right.
But if you're paying 7% and you're collecting roughly 10%, and like you said, your note is for 100 that you owe, but you're receiving a 10% on 150,
There's a big spread.
you've got a good spread there that you need to decide for your personal business.
How that money's gonna be used.
Yeah, and
How-
you can
how
kind
you-
of separate that, right? So you can take some of that profit, say 500 a month, put some of that towards your underlying note. You may want to keep some of that in your business account for something like, oh my God, this other property is now foreclosing.
Right.
And we need a pad there to cover that.
Those expenses.
So you don't want to just take everything and just dump it and pay stuff off
Zero it
necessarily.
out. Right.
So you do want to, you want to really evaluate kind of where you're at, what are the other investments you have going on or that you're about to look to get into, and then make that determination. And you can talk to a tax professional or a finance professional, whatever is comfortable.
Or just ask your wife.
And
They always know all, don't they?
The other thing that we didn't cover, which is worth mentioning, even though the majority of the owner finance that we do is to somebody that's going to move into that home and it's going to be their homestead, we have owner finance properties to investors.
Really?
And that makes it a whole lot easier if we had to foreclose.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're not living in the
Because
In
they're
property.
not
21 days,
homesteaded.
you're done.
But it makes it easier for the investor because the investor now can control a property
Yeah.
with a lot less money without going through.
So they came and bought it from you for 20% down period.
Exactly. And it's helped them, those particular investors that we've financed property to are using it for rental income. So they turn around and rented the property out. They're making more off the rent
than
than
what
it's
they're
costing
paying us.
to pay us.
Now, do you normally know this up front?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So they
Absolutely.
disclose to you, because they're going through the RLMLO, whether this is a primary or this is an investment.
Yeah.
Right.
The example was, we did actually have a couple of properties here in the Dallas area that were rentals.
Yeah.
And we had investors come to us and say, hey, we just want an investment property. And we said, okay, we've got two, pick one. And they didn't want to come out of pocket for the full of the cost of that property. And so we were able to do an owner finance with them.
Gotcha.
So we already knew it was a rental.
Yeah.
We already knew they weren't moving in and they were not gonna homestead that property. And so it was a very straightforward transaction. But we, again, good title company, good paperwork up front, make sure everything's in writing and understood. and, it can be a very smooth transition.
Now, those guys can't, in turn, sell that as a owner finance. They can only rent that property out.
Well, they could probably sell it, but.
They are on title.
But the title company that we use and the title paperwork that we have, there's a clause that if you attempt to sell this property,
Due on sale clause?
due on sale.
Yeah.
So you can do, I mean, it's your
Right.
property as an
Right.
investor, do with it what you want.
But I would think that would
But
so
I'm-
muddy up the water.
Yeah, but we're not.
Because if they default, you're now trying to evict a
Yeah.
primary
See,
resident.
But keep in mind, if they're going to then owner finance it to somebody else, they should technically still be going through a title company. And if they're doing that, they will see that we have a lien on that property.
Right, right.
And so we have to be paid off as
Yeah,
a lien
yeah.
holder anyway.
True.
So if they're doing everything legitimately,
Really?
then it's going to catch up with them because they're gonna see it.
And nobody would ever do that
If they're not doing it legitimately,
I
then.
mean, not in the
Right.
United States.
Not in the state of Texas.
Yeah,
If they're
especially in
not-
the state of Texas.
Yeah,
We're
if they're
too
not
honest.
using a title company, if they're not really filing all the paperwork,
Right.
then, yeah, it can get a little hairy. But again, because we did our portion of it correctly and everything is filed correctly, we do have the lien on the property, so we can go after, that property and take it back should we need
Because
to.
I'll tell you why this comes up. We lent money to an individual to do a fix and flip as an investor. He turned around and sold it as an owner finance and put the other guy on title. How that all transpired without us ever being paid off, no clue. But when he defaulted and we went in to foreclose, this is where we discovered he had done an owner finance. The guy had paid $30,000-$40,000 up front, like you guys require. And, we called and said, look, dude, we're getting ready to kick you out. And he's like, you can't. And so we were able to get all parties involved, and then they had to expedite getting a loan. But this guy had done this on 3 loans. He did it on all 3 of them. So we're like, dude, number one, you can't put a tenant in on a fix and flip. It's in our note and deeds and all that. But you more importantly can't do an owner finance where you put that guy on title. And why the title companies never found it. The guy could go and get this property free and clear. He could, legally. Be careful. So you have to understand that if you as an owner financer do that to an investor and they are somehow able to circumvent that, everybody could lose, but
Right.
the end borrower. It's a legal mess.
Yeah, again, there's risk involved.
There's huge
with
risk.
anything in real estate,
Yeah.
just like any other investment
And
options.
there are title companies who will do things, and I wouldn't say it's not above board, it just maybe have been missed. But when we found this out, I was blown away that this guy was able to be put on title. So I couldn't even foreclose on our guy because this guy was on title. I had to foreclose on both of them. And then he could go file a TRO and or bankruptcy, tie this whole thing up.
Right.
The legality was we were gonna take our client and sue the dog out of him.
Right.
I gotta be nice, because this is going on public air. And he knew it.
Yeah.
And so he then stepped up and has been expediting to get this thing paid off and not be sued by me and the borrower. So it's a mess.
But the nice thing is, nobody's gonna drive that house across state lines.
Right.
Right.
You know,
property
that
is
Yeah, that
still
house is
there.
still on concrete. That's
So
right.
it's different than
Yeah.
toting the note for.
Yeah, for a car.
For a car.
And then you gotta go find it in a field
Find the
somewhere
vehicle.
that's stripped down,
Right.
and all you got is a shell.
Right.
But yeah, it happens a lot. One of the things that I did want to talk about, that you guys bounce back and forth on, the pluses and minuses of owner financing. The plus is that you're not a landlord, you're not having to fix things. They now take ownership, and you're just a bank, so on and so forth. But the negative is, one, very hard to evict in a foreclosure. It could take several years. But number 2 is appreciation. I've sold that property in 2017 at this price, but all of a sudden, a Sam's is moving in or a Cinemax is moving in, and now this neighborhood is skyrocketed. And so, like you said, you've got one that's appreciated 80% or 80,000, I can't remember, but on an owner finance, that's a loss you take. Whereas on a
It's
rental,
not technically a loss.
well, it's never a
just
loss if you
money.
don't have it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
But-
not a financial gain for
Yeah,
us, but
right.
it is a financial gain for the person that's.
But as a rental, as that valuation increases, your profitability on that asset increases.
If you ever sell.
Only if you're selling or if you
Plus it on a
continue to
rental. Well,
increase
if
the
you
rent.
just kept it as a rental.
If it's a rental's a rental, you're making whatever you decide.
But
the
you can
rent is
also
gonna
increase
be.
rents every year
You could.
as the values
But
increase.
you're talking how much a year can you legally increase it? You're not gonna increase it by 80,000 because the property went
But you
up
could increase it by
$100.
$100, $150,
You
$200.
can, and the city will increase their property taxes
Correct.
on that, and.
So it's not always
and your-
advantageous.
And your insurance will go up.
So really, it's only a value if
You
the
just-
appreciation increases and you're ready to liquidate.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And now I'm ready to
Appreciation-
retire.
Yeah, appreciation is only valuable if you're going to move that property in some way.
Mhm.
Either do an owner finance to an investor maybe, because now it's a rental property already, you're selling it to an investor.
Right.
You can get that equity out
At that time.
and benefit from that appreciation.
You've just gotta look at the
Yeah.
situation.
When do you
Right.
decide which one's gonna be a rental, and which one's gonna be a no finance? Or is it just evolve? Do you take down a property saying, we're gonna keep them as a rental? Or how does that play? How do you decide which one goes into which bucket?
We look at primarily when we go to take down a house is doing an owner
Yeah,
finance.
we always.
That's your
we're looking at it
primary
as a
focus
Our
on it.
priority.
primary focus is
I
going to
gotcha.
be owner finance for us because of
That's what we like,
That's
that's
what
kind of
we-
our wheelhouse.
because I'm lazy. I want somebody to do
No
my-
arguments
I
here.
want somebody to do my collections. I want somebody else to pay the insurance. I want somebody else to do.
I just wanna
the-
collect a check every month.
And I know what that check is gonna be. In a rental situation, I may have the greatest renter in the world, which is whatever landlord wants. They pay on time, they're there for 30 years.
They take
never
care of the
go- they take
place.
care of the place.
It's always clean.
But if you get one of those other renters that gives you their deposit, they're there for 9 months, they mess up the carpets, they mess up the walls, they move out,
All the appliances are broke.
and now all that rent that you've collected, you gotta go in and fix all that stuff.
Yeah, because you're looking at
It's
an
down.
average price, you're getting $1,500, $1,800.
Exactly.
So you're looking at
You're off,
10,
and you're off
15 to
market-
$20,000 a
you're off
year.
market
Yeah.
for 30 to 90
Right.
days while you're fixing it up.
Plus, you
now-
just spent all that money putting it back on the market.
Correct.
No
whereas
profitability.
Owner finance, I'm making that $1,500 a month,
Yeah.
every single month. They're not gonna move out, they just put a 20% down payment.
It's almost like an MLM where you just got that residual
You just
income
got the
because you built your
residual.
downlines.
So
And-
you're right, I don't get the appreciation
Yeah.
down the road,
But I don't have the headache to go with it.
but I don't
Yeah.
have the headache to go.
Exactly.
Well, and, you know, we kind of look at projects where we can put effort in once and continue to get paid.
And be done.
Okay.
As opposed to, it's not that we're against flipping a house, we'll do it if we see money in it.
We're going to talk about that next.
But if we can hold on to it, put the effort in once and continue to get paid,
Get a residual.
yeah. I mean, that's
So
what we like.
you brought up the next topic, which is flipping, and you guys have flipped some projects.
Yeah.
Let me
Um,
just touch on one other benefit.
Sure.
On the owner finance.
On the owner finance.
Yeah, just from what we look at, is the opportunity to help someone get in a
Absolutely.
house and get out of
The
a
big
rental
picture.
situation.
Absolutely.
We've got, you know, the mortgage calculators that you can find online, and we look at that compared to what they're paying in rent and just
Mhm.
show them how they can benefit from actually owning a property versus continuing to rent and you don't gain anything. There's no equity there, there's no money back you're gonna get, there's nothing that you have at the end of that 12-month window.
There's no tax deduction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's, for us, that's also one of the things that we try to educate whoever ultimately buys our house, if they want to sit down with us and actually work through those numbers and see, what does it mean if you make one extra payment a year? What does that
Right.
do to your overall loan? And, you know, so we kind of talk through that as well.
So you're educating them on how to help them improve their life.
Absolutely.
And that's
Build a
that's
credit
huge.
as opposed to not having. A lot of people in this area in particular are very cash heavy.
Mhm.
But they don't have a bank account in some cases. They don't have credit, or they might have credit, but because of a divorce or some,
Right.
a car loan, something went
Life
awry,
situation,
something
yeah.
happened,
Right.
and so they can't get a traditional financing from a bank. And so this kind of helps them get on that track if that's really what they're wanting to do.
Nice, nice. All right, let's move into the fix and flip because you guys have done a little bit of everything. I still chuckle about your last fix and flip. and how much excitement that was, and I can only imagine the conversations you two had during that 6-month process of taking this property and hiring a contractor, dealing with a contractor politely, not so politely, getting a new contractor, so on and so forth. But again, I want to go back. So because you are heavy into owner finance, you have some rentals, why would you ever do a fix and flip, and why did you do a fix and flip? Without causing a divorce.
You want to take that one?
Sure.
No, he doesn't. I just saw him start sweating.
Fix and
It's
flip,
quick
or
cash.
fix and flip are, for us, are good for immediate profit, immediate cash.
But, okay, and they are for anybody. You
Yeah.
have that choice. Do I need the equity today, or do I build a long-term portfolio?
So your question was
Why did you choose to do that one as a fix and flip and not build it into your portfolio? You don't need the cash.
We always need cash.
Yeah,
Didn't need the cash for the pain that it caused you. That's right.
it was because of the price range. There is in the, I'm looking for the right word, the sellability. Owner, because of where we usually tend to sell in owner finances, like my wife said, a starter home or maybe a second home,
A gap filler.
The next level home is 3-bedroom, close to a school, less than $250,000. If you can punch all of the items that the typical family in this market wants and still stay in the price range, it's a good owner finance property. We're not gonna owner finance a $800,000 house,
Right.
because it could probably be done, but there's not a whole lot of people out
You
there.
got a
They can
small
afford
demographic.
it.
You got a small demographic. Somebody's gonna put $160,000, $200,000 down, make a $7,000 a month payment
Exactly.
Yeah.
as a
The
quote unquote
likelihood.
rental. Yeah,
Yeah.
very.
So that's probably
Very few
that's probably
people.
a fix and flip.
Right.
You're not going to owner finance a 1-bedroom, 1-bath house usually, because
That's an
you're
efficiency apartment.
an efficiency apartment.
Right.
Because most families don't want an efficiency apartment. Then that's a college student, or that's a worker who's in transition that needs a place to stay for the next
6 months.
6 months to a couple of
Max,
years.
yeah.
You're not going to owner finance that. So you do fix and flips on the houses that don't fit
Don't
the
fit in
demographics
that circle.
of an owner finance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this one obviously did not fit into that circle. So you saw profitability. You chose to take it down and do a rehab on it and sell
And
it.
sell it to somebody else that is either going to live there, or an investor who's going to use it as a rental
Yeah.
property, or
But no matter what, you're in and out of it within 12 months was the game plan.
Right.
yeah, well, the game plan is 3 months, but
Sometimes things go awry.
So let's talk about the pains of that.
It's my fault.
Yeah.
So I slept on the couch a couple times.
I'm glad you got to stay on the couch and not in the car. So looking back now, and of course, a big portion of our audience is flippers. Of that, I'd say 75% of our audience is flippers, and then you have buy and hold rentals, all that. But then of the 70% of flippers, I'd say a good 45% of those are newbies, done less than 5 deals. So looking back on that project, knowing then what you know now, what would you do different? What mistakes did you make in that project, and how could you have prevented that, other than not listening to your wife? And we could just remove that, because that's going to be every man's mistake.
I allowed a contractor to convince me he could do something that he didn't have the skill level to do.
Did you know this because, and you just believed in him, or you didn't do your due diligence and you took him at his word?
I thought I did sufficient due diligence. He was recommended to us from another investor who does primarily rental properties.
Oh, lipstick.
Yeah. So
We thought we could trust their opinion.
this contractor does a lot of their day-to-day or week-to-week
Maintenance.
maintenance. So he's a maintenance guy.
Yeah, he's not a
He's not a
rehabber
rehab,
contractor.
correct.
He paints walls,
Exactly.
he stretches carpet,
Yep.
puts
And-
trim on doors.
And so he was recommended. I said, well, they're successful. They've got a lot of rental properties. He's their maintenance guy, but don't hire, I guess, bottom line, don't hire a maintenance guy.
Right.
To do a rehab.
To do it, especially
Less than
obviously something that's not a traditional rehab. This one had some extensive work that needed to be done.
And
Right.
and I allowed him to, I gave him enough rope to hang himself, and then I gave him some more rope.
That he hung you with him.
That he hung me,
Yeah.
and I should have stepped in when I realized that he was in over his head and said, look, you know, you're a good guy, go do the maintenance work, let me get somebody in here that really knows what they're doing instead of you trying to figure it out on the fly and convince me.
So,
and I
In that, it's like as being an employer, you hire slow but fire fast.
Yeah.
And you should have, once you realized this wasn't working out, instead of continuing to try to fix it, you should have cut ties immediately and moved on to somebody else, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
when emotions, you know, sometimes you really want to help somebody.
Right.
And you think, okay, you know, they're really putting forth their best effort, they'll make it happen. You cannot run a business like that.
But what do we always say? No good deed goes unpunished.
absolutely.
I know, but that's not
And
gonna
my wife
stop
hates it
me.
when I say that, but it's reality.
It does, it's true, and I cannot deny that, but that doesn't mean that you still don't have that desire to
Right.
help somebody.
We always
And
want
we
to
always
give
want
everybody
that. You
business.
don't, you
Right.
don't wanna be tainted by, you know, one bad apple.
Right.
Because there's a ton of bad apples out there.
There's a ton is a nice
So,
word.
yeah, so, you know,
Yeah, not being
you
too
just have to remember from a
Edited.
business
Censored.
standpoint
Yeah.
that you are running a business.
Right.
You do have a timeline that you've defined, you've put it in writing, you've got it on a schedule, and you need to stay to that schedule. If you
Period.
don't, then you are affecting your own bottom line. The guy's still gonna get paid, he's still
Period.
gonna come after you because
Right.
he was there 3 days, whether he did the work or not.
Right.
So at that point, you are hurting yourself, and if you choose to do that, and I say choose because you have to take that responsibility because it is
Take that
your
ownership.
business.
Yep. Right.
So
Yeah.
if you choose to do that because you wanna help somebody, it's okay. Just understand that you're diminishing your profit, you're keeping that property out there for a longer period of time with more things that potentially could happen to it. in
And
the
missing that
process.
window.
Totally missing the window.
Yep, yep.
So there's a lot of things in play. There's a wheel that's turning.
Right.
And if you choose this guy to come put a wrench in it, and he's gonna slow that
calm
process down,
Yep.
then, and you're okay with it, go for it. But if you're not okay with it, then like you said, you gotta hire slow but fire fast.
Right.
You gotta move on.
Thanks, now I'm back on the couch. Right?
Open those wounds back up, huh?
Everybody makes, makes mistakes, so. I made the
Other-
mistake with the one that's currently in foreclosure because
Yeah.
I emotionally was involved with the person that ultimately bought that house, and I thought that she was wanting to get herself and her family in a better situation, and, you know, they really didn't. They just were saying what they needed to say to be able to get into that
No
house.
good deed goes unpunished.
Correct.
And
So-
it's terrible that is a motto, slogan, a way of life. But I'm telling you, I've been down it. I know you guys have been down it. I guarantee you there's a ton of listeners who have stuck their neck out there to help somebody out and have regretted it. And unfortunately, you're right. You can't stop trying to help people
Right.
because you've been burnt. Then we remove human nature. We remove our passion to improve people's lives. But it gets old.
Yeah.
It gets old, and you get calloused by it, and you're like, really, why am I continuing to do this when every time I turn around, I'm getting burnt by it?
Right.
Other than not pulling the trigger quick enough with this contractor, once you did make a change, did everything then move favorably and got the deal done? And have you sold that property?
No, we've got
A contract.
a contract for one of the, well, there's actually two I was doing at the same time.
Oh, I didn't realize
So
that. I knew there was
so we've got
one.
got
We
a
doubled the pay.
a contract.
That clears up so much. I knew it was one. I didn't realize we were doubling down on the panes.
So we've got a contract for one, and the other is we're waiting on a contract. It's available.
Good.
So anybody
looking for a property?
it's near 35. And
What city is it in?
It's in Louisville.
In Louisville?
35 and 121. It's a great property.
It should be up on MLS here soon.
It should. It's everything in there is new. It's been leveled. The plumbing is new. It's a whole new floor plan.
So this was a complete gut out?
It wasn't a complete gut out, but it was a complete redo.
All the way down to the 2x4s, down to the studs?
In some of the rooms, we went all the way to the studs and
New wiring, new plumbing, sheetrock,
Yeah.
new
paint,
yeah,
HVAC system.
It's all
New HVAC.
there. Replaced a portion of the fence. It's
Nice.
new garage door openers. It's
Nice.
It's nice.
It's not a total gut out. We've done
Quite a bit.
that before. This one wasn't, but yeah, there's quite a bit of updates on this one.
We gutted a house up here in Anna. Speaking of gut outs, we took this house in Anna last year. It was built in 1910, and it was just originally a house about the size of the studio here, with an outhouse. The two sisters that I bought it from were in their late 70s, but they had grown up in the house.
Wow.
So we know it was at least 75, 78 years old. Mom and Dad had bought it. They had passed, handed it to the kids. But anyway, they had added on to it with some makeshift, rooms and added a bath in there. But anyway, so I sent our crew out there and I said, I want this thing gutted. We're moving everything. They literally and took all the flooring out. So there was nothing but bones. And I pulled up one day, and it was a little bit windy outside, and that house starts leaning. They had not put any interior supports when they ripped all the interior walls out.
Oh.
And we scrambled for about 45 minutes putting up exterior, and that house
Support.
leaned like this for days until we could finally get it interior boarded and slowly start at the back, pushing it back, bracing it up. It's like, guys, if I hadn't pulled it up, this thing would have been on top of you. So when you say complete gut out, I will never do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't.
We
go
haven't gone that far.
There was nothing but exterior walls.
No.
So it was just a big old box that the wind was about to push over.
Gosh.
That would have been a terrible deal. So as you guys travel, you guys do a lot of guest speaking for other real estate investment associations. What do you see the trend of the industry? Where do you see the fix and flip world going? You've got any, magic 8-ball, crystal ball, anything like that to share with the people on what's happening?
I think the only thing our crystal ball has been consistently telling us is that things change.
Are you running for office?
No,
That
but
was a
it's
very
the truth.
political answer.
Things change, and everything goes through a high and low, but there's always different strategies out there that you can still apply. So will there be properties out there that you can flip or that you can owner finance, rent, etc.? Yeah, they will be out
So you
there.
have to be diversified.
You just have to be open to maybe a new strategy, a new way of flipping the property. We've looked at things like Airbnb. We might take a property and decide to do something like that with one if it's in the right location. So there's always new ways. You just have to be open to the change coming at you and then be willing to change to adjust to fit.
So as long as you're not rigid and tunnel visioned,
Yeah.
just adapt as the environment,
As
as
it
our
goes.
industry is evolving, changing. We know that the fix and flip world, especially here in Texas, has tightened down.
It's very tightened.
Inventory's gone thin, and we've got more and more flippers, investors out there on the market today than we've ever had because it's been very successful. And so everybody is, wanting to get their hand in it. But doesn't mean that, like you said, that there's not a way to continue to be success.
There's
You
still
just have to
opportunity.
be able to be open-minded and get a different strategy, a different vision of where you want to be and where you want to go with all that. Anything else? Jim?
I take it to solving a problem. If you can solve either a perceived problem or a real problem, you have a valuable asset. You're going to make money if you can solve someone's problem or someone's perceived problem. And almost everybody needs a place to live. Whether they are willing to purchase it and call it their own, or whether they want to to pay you rent for it and live there, for a shorter amount of time, or they want to lease it from you and live there for a longer period than a rental or a lesser period. Almost everybody needs a place to live.
Right.
If you can get, like my wife said, if you can adjust and adapt and go to the places where people want to be, whether that's Dallas, Fort Worth, or McKinney, or Plano, you want to avoid the places they don't want to be. Don't go buy houses in a place that nobody wants to live in.
Southeast Dallas. Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
And then determine which space you want to be in. Do you want to be in the extremely short-term rental, the Airbnbs, the little bit longer, 6 to 12 months rental market? Do you want to rent to college kids and let their parents pay the bill for those 4 years?
Yeah.
You want to go longer term and get a house that is going to appreciate in value. You just have to assume the maintenance cost on it and the risk of getting the right renter in there. Or you want to go, we sell all our houses on 30-year notes. We're looking at a 30-year payoff on almost everything that we own or finance.
Nice.
So it's, what's the problem? How do you get in front of it? And what can you do to capitalize and make money on
The solution.
on providing a solution to that problem or perceived
Nice.
problem?
Okay. You have any horror stories you want to share? Any one deal that you just, besides the fix and flip, we already talked about that one. Any other ones that was a joint mistake on and not a one-sided, I told you so?
I mean, for me, it was the one that ultimately went into this, they filed bankruptcy and then we had to do the foreclosure, but getting emotionally attached either to a property or to an individual or family that you're trying to work with can be a detriment to your business. So, I mean, that to me, that would kind of, if I were to give a tip or something, that would be the thing to keep in mind is when you're looking at something, make sure you run your numbers, make sure the numbers are legitimate, they make sense and they've been verified, and then make that decision on what strategy you're going to use or who's going to be the buyer and who you're going to work with, what's the third party individuals or companies you're going to work with, where you're going to borrow the money.
Mm-hmm.
So keep it on a piece of paper with numbers involved and the verification that follows that.
And stick to it.
And don't get the emotional aspect of what might be happening along with it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to keep the drama away from it.
It's like Gordon Gekko says, money has no emotion.
That's right. If you can keep it simple
Mm-hmm.
to that, those the steps that you decide that you want to go through, everything is verifiable, and you can see the profit on the back end, everybody's going to make money or benefit in that deal, you're good.
But doesn't every person, especially new, and this is so I want your opinion on how to help people. Every person that's new is going to have a lot of emotion in this.
Well, yeah.
Because they're doing this because of the emotion, the passion, the glory, the benefit that it's supposed to provide. So when they do get a deal, unfortunately, it's going to be emotional.
Yep.
The only people that I know that are no longer emotional about it are veterans. And I would believe that if we could go back to every person on the first 5 deals, there was a ton of emotions in that. So knowing now what that pitfall could become, how do we educate our viewers to maybe help them remove that emotion? I mean, what would be a self-help on that?
For me, it really is putting it on paper.
On paper?
Putting
And
it on
being
paper
disciplined to follow
and-
it?
Correct. You've got to
Okay.
be disciplined. Any business you have to be disciplined. You've got to know where your profits are, where your gains are going to be. You have to know the basics of running a business. But you're right. Even our first deal, our second deal, both were super emotionally charged.
You're all excited, I got a
Yes.
deal, we're gonna make
We're
millions.
We're gonna do
Yeah,
this
man.
deal.
Donald Trump, here I come.
If we can't do this, we're out. We're
Yeah.
out of this industry.
Do or die.
Do or die, and But what really kind of helped us focus on what needed to be focused on is actually putting it on paper, running through the numbers, and moving forward.
Good.
Don't move forward without, like, don't make assumptions on things and move forward based on your emotions.
And don't overlook your due diligence because you think it's all in place.
Yeah.
I'd add at least one more thing to that. Not only put it down on paper to remind yourself why you're doing, what your objective is, but use people that have done it before.
Yeah.
Go to good mentors. Surround
Absolutely.
yourself with people who know what they're doing, that can walk in and say, you know what, that guy's probably a good maintenance guy, but he's not a good contractor.
Right.
Let me get you a good contractor.
Well, and the other thing is they have no emotion. Somebody
Exactly.
else who's a mentor is not emotionally attached to it, so they're going to give you a true
An
perspective
honest, yeah.
of what the deal looks like.
Yeah.
You're too close to the forest to see the trees,
Absolutely.
or whatever that goes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Huh? It's too
Yes.
close to the trees to see the forest. I think it is. I have had the content there.
Utilize a title company that is experienced in what you're wanting to do.
Right.
In our deal, our owner finance, our title company, we go to them sometimes and say, we're thinking about doing this
Executing
house.
this, yeah.
Can you look it over? And they're like, yeah, looks like a good deal, or no, here are some pitfalls in this.
Gotcha.
Don't get involved in this.
I
house.
think that's probably the biggest nugget, carrot, however you want it, is get somebody, a mentor who's
Yeah.
been down there, done that, because no matter what, they're not emotionally attached to the deal.
Yeah.
And if they are a true mentor, friend, leader, they're going to give you an honest opinion.
Correct.
And they're not going to blow smoke up your skirt or steal the deal out from underneath you. And I think that's where most newbies are scared, is that if I take this to a veteran like you, you're going to tell me no, and then you can go right behind my back and do the deal.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that relationship has to come in, to where as a new person who's done, and I say a new person with less than 5 deals in 12 months, you've got to find a group of people to be able to bounce stuff off of and say, here's what I've got, does this make sense? And this is one thing that Global does, is we try to be that, because there's no way we can take down the deal. We want to look at it, we want to analyze it for you, we want to run the numbers and let you know if that's profitable or not. And we've done that over the last 5 years with our clients and built our client base, because we're not going to steal the deal. And the other thing, if we're not going to lend money, it ain't a good deal.
Right.
I make no money with it sitting in the vault. It has to be lent out to make that interest and earnings. So we want to do every deal, but if we tell a client, this deal is not going to work, it's not because we want it for ourselves, it's nobody's going to make you money at this structure. Now you can restructure it and it'll be profitable, but here's why it won't work.
Yeah.
And that's what our new clients need to find. Whether it's a lender like us, get into a reassociation, or finding a mentoring class, they've got to get that to help somebody remove that emotion for them.
Well, that, and on the flip side of a mentor, I will say, make sure that you're not wasting that mentor's time.
Right, with junk.
If you really need to know how to do some basic evaluation before you start just submitting 100 addresses.
But this one work, this one work, this one work. Who knows?
Yeah, that also is a waste of your time, it's a waste of the mentor's time, and it gets you nowhere. So when you have focused in on something and it really looks like a potential, then yes, it's very valuable to have a team around you, have good mentors, good companies, third-party companies, title companies, that you've kind of built that relationship
Bounce
with.
everything off of.
Yeah, so you can kind of look at the different aspects of the deal and make sure that, yes, if I borrow from Global and I'm selling it at this price and I own or finance it with this interest rate, that all these numbers look correct, and I will end up making money and not paying money.
Right, losing my shirt.
Correct.
And then bailing on it because it went south.
Yeah, but just if it's a legitimate option that you might move forward with, then that's the point at which you want to say, hey, mentor, can you please review this for me?
Review it.
Just verify
Cross the
that I'm
T's
on
and
the
dot
right
I's.
track.
Yes, perfect.
Right.
So I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank our guests, Keerti, Joshie, and Jim Benton, for being on the show. If you have any questions, comments, please reach out to us. Our website is globalintegrityfinance.com, or you can call us at 214-548-5190, and I look forward to hearing from you and talk to you soon.